Hey, how's it going, people? Indie Pride here with Milk and Cookie Total War, and Creative Assembly released some Dark Elf footage today. Really good battle between the High Elves and the Dark Elves. We're showing Malekith, the Witch King, and his army take on the High Elves in Carnthel, one of their settlements in Ulthuan. So we're going to jump in, let Darren kick us off, and as we go through the battle, I'll occasionally pause it, do a little bit of analysis, and talk about what we're seeing on screen. Let's get it started.
Hello everybody and welcome to our Dark Elves battle Let's Play. This Let's Play is a direct continuation of yesterday's video, where we left off with Malekith sieging the High Elf settlement of Carnthel in order to disrupt their ritual. Before we get into the battle, I wanted to show off the amazing landscape of this battlefield and some of the High Elf architecture. The settlement battles feel a lot more alive in Total War Warhammer 2. As you can see, the battlefield is littered with High Elf army camps, farms, houses and roads that lead directly into the settlement itself, which is
So this is something that I noticed first when I was playing with Caretaker in my time in San Francisco, and it's actually a really big deal for me. So one of my biggest issues with Game 1 are that the maps, the regular land battle maps, when you go in and attack a settlement that's unwalled, you just get kicked onto a battlefield that's pretty bland, right? Most of the battles you'll fight are on open plain with very little geographical characteristics, no real terrain to fight over, nothing really interesting going on. You'll see a lot of that in Sylvania, you'll see a lot of that in the Empire. Yeah, you'll have trees here or there, you'll have a hill here or there, but just nothing really special that indicates you're in this fantasy world. There's always some stuff in the skybox outside the map that gives it a little bit of that fantasy twist, but I like stuff that you can actually interact with on the battlefield, and this is something that I think is really important for the series going forward. So now when you attack a settlement that doesn't have walls, you're going to be getting more stuff like this, and like what you saw in that campaign battle with Caretaker, where you're outside the High Elf settlement. You'll get to see a lot of that architecture, but these parts of the map are actually going to be playable as well. So these tents that are in the middle of the battlefield, you can actually fight around, fight over. And it sounds dumb, but it really does add a lot of flavor and nuance to the game and the battles themselves. When you're just fighting over a bland, blank map with just a little few trees here or there, a few hills there, here or there, it just doesn't make for very exciting gameplay. It doesn't make for particularly exciting battles. So I think terrain and geography are often overlooked pieces of the puzzle in Total War battles, and seeing it get brought to life in this kind of manner, I think, is going to be a really good thing for the game in general. It is important for me to note, this is not a legit siege battle. This is kind of like the unwalled settlement battles of previous Total Wars, like Rome 2 and Attila. We're not going to be fighting inside a village, but it's got a lot more of that feel. If the settlement has walls, you'll obviously be fighting the siege battles the way you do in Total War Warhammer 1, where you attack from the one side. And we can talk about siege battles later. I'm not going to get too much into it, but obviously siege battles in the first game, and from what we've seen in Game 2, are not going to be my favorite thing, but we'll just have to see how they progress and how they get improved on going forward.
is right at the back of the defenders. As well as that, graphical updates to lighting, reflections and anti-aliasing help really bring the environments to life. In the deployment phase now, here we have the Witch King himself, Malekith.
Alright, so obviously this is Malekith the Witch King. If you notice, he does have some stats that are different than what we saw in the Val's Anvil quest battle, the quest battle for Destroyer, where he's fighting the High Elves, the one that I got to play in San Francisco. So he's not on Seraphon for this one. So in that battle, I believe he has 485 or 495 weapon strength. So he has less in this one because he's not mounted up on his dragon. He doesn't have as much AP, so he loses the AP trait. And he has slightly worse leadership, I believe, and higher melee attack to make up for that. So dragons, typically what you'll get with a dragon is you'll get slightly lower melee attack, but higher weapon strength and armor piercing to kind of compensate for that. So he does have a shield. I believe that's a Supreme Spell shield. It's going to be part of his model regardless, but I think he's got a lot of his quest items already equipped for this campaign. I think this was like turn 75 into the Dark Elves campaign, and this is basically a prelude to his invasion of Ulthuan. So Darren's not super far into the campaign. One thing I did notice from the last video that Darren uploaded was that it feels like the campaigns are going to be lasting a lot longer, because he's like turn 75 and just now beginning to invade the High Elves' home continent, which is not even a touch on Lustria or Ulthuan, or not Lustria and Ulthuan, Lustria and the Southlands, which will take a long time to invade and completely conquer. So I think that we'll be looking at grand campaigns that are pretty gigantic in scope and in length. I don't think it'll be crazy to be pushing over 200 turns in the Great Vortex campaign for Game 2.
Standing smugly eyeing his prize. On his left we have 3 units of Witch Elves, a fast-paced, lightly armoured, high damage dealing unit. Considering their vulnerability, I've placed 2 units of Black Guard of Naggarond behind them, the most expensive infantry unit for the Dark Elves.
I'm still very curious if anything's going to be done for the melee intervals for halberds in Game 2. I have talked about it in Game 1. Halberds are versatile. They do have bonus versus large. They do sometimes have charge defense against all or large. And they do have armor piercing, so they can, in theory, be good against infantry and cavalry. In practice, their slow melee intervals and basically how slowly they attack really does hurt them in prolonged melee engagements in a lot of different kinds of engagements. And so I'm wondering if CA is going to stick to that kind of design philosophy where they have maybe decent stats, good weapon strength, good armor piercing damage, but very slow attacks, or if some of the elite halberd units in Game 2, like the Temple Guard, like the Phoenix Guard, like the Black Guard of Naggarond, will suddenly become much more efficient and effective. Because in tabletop, some of these halberd units were amongst the best infantry units in the entire game. Doesn't necessarily mean that has to translate to Total War Warhammer 2, but it would definitely be nice to see Phoenix Guard and Black Guard be worth their weight in gold, because they're 2 of my favorite units, and they are supposed to be very powerful in both the lore and in the source material, and in Total War Warhammer 2, I feel like they should be strong there as well. They're going to be very expensive to field.
Of course we have our tank of the battlefield, our War Hydra, such a cute little thing.
I really do love the model on that Hydra. So many moving pieces to it. The 5 heads look amazing, and the Pit Viper-like approach to their heads is a super good look for it. It doesn't really look like the tabletop model, which I think is good, honestly, because I really like the way CA's handled it. Looking at the stats, 440 weapon strength, pretty strong. Not a lot of armor, but of course you do have that regeneration, and you do have the benefit of the fire breath, which is going to be pretty important in a lot of battles. From what we've seen in some of these battles so far, the breath attacks actually seem like they're going to be worth using, which is pretty awesome. Very happy about that. Causes terror, 8,500 health as well. So 8,500 health with regen on large unit sizes. It's pretty good. I think this monster is going to be worth using in a lot of situations.
And onwards now to the Bleak Swords. These are low tier infantry, but can hold their own in a fight and soak up missiles at an acceptable rate. Next we have the Black Ark Corsairs, which we recruited from the Black Ark itself.
So this is another unit for the Dark Elves that are going to have a bonus versus infantry. So the dual swords, the Black Ark Corsairs, will have that bonus versus infantry. I believe the other variant with the repeater crossbows will not. So the Witch Elves are the other kind of infantry unit for the Dark Elves. They're going to have that bonus versus infantry. So they'll certainly be useful when you're racking up that Murderous Prowess buff. I don't think they're going to be particularly expensive to field, but they're a pretty solid unit, and I think you're going to be seeing a lot of them in multiplayer. Not incredible stats, but I think they're going to be one of those units that's just cost-effective, kind of like Flagellants. Obviously, they're not going to fill the exact same role because these guys have 80 armor, but kind of along that same line of something that's going to fill out your front ranks and basically just help you get to that murderous buff pretty quick without sacrificing too much in terms of your survivability in melee.
With their Sea Dragon cloaks, they have very high armor, even without a shield.
And this is the first time we've gotten a good look at Shades. I think this is actually, I never got to play with them in the quest battle. We've gotten a look at them on Facebook from Creative Assembly, but I think that's it. So looking at their stats now, and this is the first time I'm actually seeing their stats. 29 missile damage, armor piercing, 125 range, so again, that's going to be about 50 or so less than a lot of the other range units in the game. I want to say that High Elf Archers are getting moved up to like 165 range. I could be wrong on that. I think the default for a lot of crossbows and range units in Game 1 is 160. I think that might be getting buffed ever so slightly in Game 2, but not 100% sure on that front. Either way, it's going to be about 45 or 50 less range than your typical range unit, but you're going to get the benefit of faster shots, quicker volleys, and you'll also get stalk and vanguard deployment on these guys. So if you can get them around the flank, like against something like dwarfs, obviously lots of things in Game 1 and Game 2 are going to be very good against the dwarfs and good against the Dawi, but I can imagine these guys being very good at shooting into the rear of either high armor stuff without that shield block chance, or I guess in theory, it doesn't really matter if they have the shield block chance or not, because if you're able to vanguard and stalk behind an enemy army, you'll be able to shoot into their rear, and they won't get the shield block chance anyway. So they have decent melee stats as well. Some of these guys will come equipped with great weapons, so that will give them a little bit of versatility. But yeah, I mean, this unit is looking pretty solid. Again, pricing is going to be very important, but loving the models on them as I am loving the models for most of the Dark Elf units, and definitely looking forward to seeing how they play in this battle. Let's get it going again.
Behind them we have the Shades, a sneaky and vicious unit that are mainly missile focused but decent melee combatants. The Dark Shards with shields are much weaker than the Shades but will sustain enemy fire much longer, so I have them guarding the Reaper Bolt Thrower. Lastly we have our Khainite Assassin, whom as many people correctly pointed out in yesterday's video is a male.
Okay, so I'm glad I caught the unit card there before it went away. So the stats, looking at them, you'd say, wow, that 800 missile damage, that sounds completely insane. And it is. That's really crazy damage. The thing you have to remember here is he only has 70 range. He's got that repeater crossbow, but it's super short range. 70 range means you have to be very, very close to an enemy to get that 800 missile damage going. He does have poison attacks, very high melee attack of 70, so he's going to be hitting a lot of the time he attacks. He also has poison, which you can never underestimate. That debuff is extremely good. Weapon strength is pretty low, but he has some potions here, one of which will help him eat through gates insanely quickly, which I think is pretty cool. So it'll be really useful in siege battles. But more than that, I believe he also has another one that gives him insane weapon strength. So a temporary buff that just makes him an absolute monster in melee combat, but then once it wears off, you're basically a 30 armor hero in the middle of an enemy. So it's going to be one of those one-shot units, right? Like, you're going to have to commit him into melee, try to take out the enemy lord before the buff wears off, and if you don't, you're going to be a sad boy, and you'll be losing him pretty early into that fight. I like that kind of design, though. I like that kind of risk-reward, where you're forced to put your hero or lord into a very vulnerable position if you want to get the most out of them. So I think that's cool. Hopefully he'll actually be worth bringing. I mean, 330 weapon strength does sound really low, of course, but we don't know exactly how strong the potions he's going to be able to field are. It does look like he has 3 of those. Don't know what all of them are yet, but we do know one of them will allow him to break through gates insanely quickly in a siege battle. Let's continue on.
Assassin, whom as many people correctly pointed out in yesterday's video is a male, as there are no female Khainite Assassins in the lore. Alright, now let's get ready for battle. I'll be cutting between cinematic replay footage and regular gameplay to give you guys a close-up look of the units and an idea of the gameplay. For most of the cinematic shots, I'll try to be quiet and let you guys enjoy the atmosphere. And on that note, let's begin. Now a quick reminder is that we have a Black Ark reinforcing us in this battle, which gives us additional bombardment support. So we're going to try and clump up the overwhelming numbers of the High Elves to call down that support on them.
Now, we haven't gotten a great look at repeater bolt throwers thus far, but in this battle we're going to get some really good looks at the damage they're able to put out. Now, of course, we can't see the HP bars of the enemy, which is unfortunate because it does really give us a lot more information about spell damage and about missile damage and all that kind of stuff. But keep an eye on the damage that these guys reap. They can do some serious work from range, it looks like, and remember, you can swap between anti-infantry clumps that will do damage to big swaths of infantry, or you can turn the multiple bolts that they're firing right now into a single bolt that will do extra damage versus large units. So being able to swap between those two will make them very versatile, and honestly I think they're going to be a lot more effective than the bolt throwers the dwarves have in game 1. Go figure.
As well as that, when we kill a certain amount of enemies, we'll get our murderous prowess effect army-wide, which will increase our attack and charge by 25% and give smaller increases to leadership and missiles. So the basic plan is to devastate as much as possible early on to buff all of our troops to achieve maximum damage output. I had to pull my Witch Elves back and let the Black Guard take over as they were about to get charged by some anti-infantry cavalry.
Now, one thing you're going to notice here, and I think that you should pay attention to for the duration of this battle, is, of course, we know battles are going to be very fast in Warhammer 2. CA has talked about battle speed and how they might be changing the speed of it a little bit. Again, and I've said this many times before, you guys need to understand that this is going to be the design philosophy for Warhammer and the trilogy going forward. If you don't like this kind of battle speed, I'm not going to say too bad, because there are lots of mods, and there's, like, certainly you should voice your opinion. If you want longer battles, tell CA that. But from everything they're doing with battles in the Warhammer trilogy, it's very clear that this is a design philosophy that they're following. It's the same thing with stamina and how quickly it regenerates. They want the battles to be fast-paced. They want them to be micro-intensive. So I think that if you want them to be longer, definitely continue to voice your opinions, but you might have to rely on mods if you want them to be shorter. Because, I mean, look at this. We're already a minute into the game, and a lot of the infantry units, of course, they're Witch Elves, so that stands to reason. But even this Black Guard unit over on the left side here, already they've lost about 25%, maybe 20% of their health. So, yeah, they're going to be very fast-paced, but pay attention to how much damage the High Elves are outputting. A lot of people have been complaining that the High Elves are being completely left in the dust, that they're going to be an awful faction. But take a look as Darren fights this battle. Of course, he's not going to be playing optimally because he's recording and he's also showcasing the game in general. But the High Elves are going to do a lot of damage in this battle. And I think that's an important thing to point out, because a lot of people have been saying that the High Elves are completely outclassed, they're completely garbage. This is in the hands of the AI, and they're actually going to end up doing quite well in this battle.
Just about managed to pull out of that one. The War Hydra is in the thick of the combat now. I'll need to give it some space so it can use its fiery breath ability.
Now, it doesn't help that Darren is completely eviscerating his own right flank with his own repeater bolt throwers. I would have loved to have seen the HP bar of those units as he was getting shot there. They're just covered in dust and dirt right now, but yeah, he is slaughtering them from behind, and you'll notice he's continuing to fire into there. And yeah, even once these Sword Masters of Hoth that he's fighting against have routed, he'll continue firing in and continue doing a lot of friendly fire damage, which is a lot worse Skaven-esque than Dark Elfy, but hey, anything to get that Murderous Prowess buff, right?
Little bit of friendly fire with the Reaper throws there, but it's a necessary sacrifice.
Little bit, yeah.
The enemy Moondragon is
still
targeting
doing
my Witch Elves.
There's a big breath spell right there.
That pretty much wiped out the unit completely. We'll get our Shades to focus on the Illyrian Reaver archers which have flanked me. They should be able to take them down pretty easily at this range.
Okay, so this is our first look at the Moon Dragon. It does have the exact same model as the Sun Dragon, which from a tabletop and from a lore perspective, I mean, it does make sense. Basically what happens with Sun Dragons, Moon Dragons, and Star Dragons is that it's obviously still the same kind of dragon. It's still the same breed. What differentiates them is their age. So as a Sun Dragon becomes older, it will become a Moon Dragon, and the colors will start fading and start shifting a little bit. And then once it's already hit the stage of Star Dragon, typically what will happen, even though dragons can be any color that they were born with, they'll shift many different colors throughout the course of their lifetime. Typically, they'll start getting cooler in color. So what was typically like an orange or a fiery red at the beginning stages of their life will shift into a more blue or cooler shade at the end of their lives. And they'll become much bigger and much more powerful. So Moon Dragon is kind of in the intermediate stage of the dragon life cycle. What I would like to see with the dragons in general, and this may be true for the mounts, it's something we've already seen for the Wood Elves in Game 1, is that the Great Eagles, for example, will have different headdresses depending on who's mounting them. So if you're a Spellsinger, there's a certain headdress for the Spellsinger Great Eagles. There's a certain headdress for the Glade Lord and Glade Lady Great Eagles, and the Great Eagles without any rider whatsoever don't have any headdresses. So it is very much possible that these dragons that don't have any riders are going to look one way, but when they're mounted up with not an Archmage, but whoever, well, I guess a High Elf Lord or a High Elf Lady, High Elf Prince, High Elf Princess can mount up on them. I want there to be some different characteristics that differentiate it besides color. So I'm fine with the orange color scheme for Sun Dragons. I'm fine with the yellow color scheme for the Moon Dragon. And then it looks like the picture that we got of the Warp Lightning Cannon shooting at the Star Dragon in the background in that one Skaven screenshot, that's going to be a Star Dragon. So the blue with the orange crest is going to be the Star Dragon color. I'm fine with those colors, but I do want some kind of other deciding characteristic, like a headdress or something, some markings on the dragon that make it clear that it's more regal, more important, more powerful. So these are the equivalent of feral dragons. Of course, there's no such thing because they're all very intelligent, but I'd like to see some kind of characteristics there that differentiate them just a little bit more. Besides size. One thing I'm pretty sure we're going to see is the Star Dragon is significantly bigger than the Moon Dragon. At least it looks that way in the screenshot we've seen thus far.
Just got my Hydra out of the main combat now, so we'll look to target some of these archers that are peppering me from a distance.
Well, looks like I did some damage. I don't see him getting back up. A few of them did. Maybe 5 or 6 kills on that volley from the Hydra.
Something I forgot to show off are my Dark Riders. I've kept them hidden in the forest to engage some rogue missile units, so we'll send them after them now.
So these are going to be your light cavalry for the Dark Elves, and this time they are rocking without the repeater crossbow, so this will be your melee variant. The Dark Riders or Shields are going to be your best melee light cav. Again, kind of crap stats, to be honest. Not a whole lot of HP. They are very fast at 92 speed, which is nice. Not very good leadership, not very good armor. Charge bonus is pretty weak. They're going to be one of those ones that you pretty much want to focus on just killing archers in the back lines and help them build up towards that murderous prowess and then unleash them into a rear charge once they've gotten that. Once they've gotten their murderous prowess, their charge bonus will be, and their melee attack will probably be at a stage where you can get a pretty powerful hammer and anvil off, but before that, they're just going to melt in melee to pretty much anything that can defend itself in melee.
Alright, looks like we've got a clump of troops on the left. Let's call down all 3 types of bombardment. The bombardments range from high splash to high concentrated fire, but I like to just use all 3 at once.
Okay, so that was really satisfying. You can kind of see the gigantic explosion ripple and emanate throughout that entire unit. It's very satisfying. So that's from the Black Ark. As Darren said, there are going to be 3 different abilities you can summon from the Black Ark. Some of them are going to be better for more concentrated areas, like one big explosion that will destroy a blob. Some will be better for a wider area if the units are a bit more spread out and will cover more ground. He's pretty much eviscerated this blob. A lot of these guys that he just hit are not going to be getting back up. So it's already, you can tell, much more powerful than what we saw in our build. And that was like a 2-month-old build though. So a lot of the stats and a lot of the damage output that we saw in those quest battles and a lot of the gameplay you've seen at Gamescom and the San Francisco event is not necessarily really up to the state of the game that it is currently, because that was, like I said, like a 2-month-old build. So because these balance changes are being really starting to get hammered at this point in the development life cycle, that's where a lot of the big changes are going to be happening. And that's why, even though I did talk about high elf stats in the Dark Elf video, I think it's clear, like, CA is not going to screw over the high elves. And if they do, it might be 1 or 2 units, but it's not going to be the entire faction. I think that people have been a little bit, understandably, I guess, worried, and it's fine to share your worry if you feel like stats aren't up to par. For example, the Dragon Prince's speed I still don't think is up to par. 74 speed. They should be faster than that. Definitely let your voice be heard there, but I think the high elf stats in general are going to live up to what we expect from them.
Nice, that's pushed us over the edge for murderous prowess. This should turn the tables. Okay, looks like the Moon Dragon is just about finished. It's broken and trying to get away. I'm going to switch our bow throws to anti-large and target it to see if we can take it down. Our cavalry has actually gotten a bit bogged down now with those archers, and we're constantly being fired on, so it's not looking too good for them. Looks like the Moondragon has taken off. Don't think it'll be coming back though. Let's start using some of Malekith's spells. We'll use Chill Wind on this line of archers to scatter them. Interestingly, now you can actually rotate wind spells, so that makes them much more effective.
Okay, so that is a pretty gigantic bombshell there, actually, at least from a multiplayer perspective. So, one of the big trade-offs for wind spells in Total War Warhammer multiplayer is that it's very positioning dependent. So if you decide to bring someone like Manfred, for example, on a Hellsteed, and you bring Wind of Death, and you want to get on the flank of a dwarf unit to cast Wind of Death down the front rank of their line and just completely eviscerate the front ranks, which is very doable, especially against the dwarfs, you have to put Manfred in a kind of scary position. Okay, so maybe not against dwarfs, and that might not be the best example. Let's say against the Wood Elves. They're going to have some air that might be scary for Manfred to get onto the flank, and you're basically putting him in a very vulnerable position where he could die, or get at least caught down, tied down in melee. If you're able to do it like this, where you can change the vector or the direction that the wind spell comes from, even if you aren't in the position to cast it in a straight line, that suddenly makes your caster much more powerful. Makes wind spells much more powerful because you're able to cast them without putting your caster into harm's way. Being able to change the direction the wind spell comes from could be really bad for some factions, like the dwarfs, because suddenly your opponent doesn't have to put their caster in a very scary position, and it's going to make wind spells in general. It's a big buff for wind spells. A big buff. I'm going to be interested to see if it makes it into the final game in that exact same kind of iteration, because it seems really strong, but it's only going to be really strong for some spells. It depends how strong they decide to make wind spells in Game 2, but everything that I've seen so far demonstrates, I think, that spells in general are going to be getting an overhaul. They've explicitly confirmed, CA has, that they want to make Magic more impactful and more damaging in Game 2. So we'll have to see, but it's a cool feature. I wonder if it will make a huge impact in terms of the multiplayer scene. I bet that it will.
Our cavalry is just freed up now, so we'll take a look for a new target to send them into. I think the battle is starting to turn in our favor. This clump of troops is still pretty big on our left, so let's throw down the Blade Wind Vortex to get them up out of here.
That's satisfying, man. Alright, I wish we had an HP bar there. I really do. A lot of these high elf units are not going to be getting back up. If that was with the blood pack enabled, you would have seen blood spurts and jibbing everywhere, which is always fun. I am pretty sure that killed like 60% of each of those units' health bars. And like basically like one shot any unit that was below like 50% HP. Like it basically just causes the entire flank there to rout in that blob. Now, are you going to blob up that much in multiplayer? You should not. And if you do, you should be expected to get punished very heavily. But this is the same thing that I saw in the Dark Elf Quest battle on a couple other people's channels. People that got more time with the game than I did. They cast Blade Wind on a couple high elf blobs and it completely destroyed stuff. And that was the month-and-a-half old build. This is the new build, and we're seeing entire units get chopped in half. So, Vortex is looking like they've been revamped a bit, looking like they do some serious DPS, that's for sure.
Nice, that pretty much took them all out. We just have a few straggler units to deal with now.
Yeah, they got at least a couple hundred kills there for sure.
The Lothern Seaguard are great in melee too, so we'll need to take them out and their lord if we want to rout their army. We'll get our bolt throwers to fire on the archers too. It looks like I forgot to put them on guard mode, so we'll have to redirect their fire. Just surrounded their princess now, so we'll
Okay, so talking about battle speed in general, again, yes, battle speed super fast in this game. 4 minutes into the battle, most of Darren's army and front line are dead. Look at his units here. Some of the models are still remaining, of course, but their HP bars are all very, very, very low. And this was against the AI, against a garrison with 20 units I think a 20 stack army and a 7 unit garrison. This is against the AI. If the AI is able to output this much damage, I think you can pretty much guarantee that the high elf stats aren't garbage. They're not all high tier stuff. Like we saw a couple of Swordmasters of Hoeth. We've seen like a Great Eagle and of course the Moon Dragon. But a lot of these are just high elf spears and high elf archers. And look at the damage the Dark Elf frontline has taken. Again, they're not playing optimally. But all these units here, super, super low HP. Murderous Prowess has activated in the top bar, and he's going to be doing some serious damage. Now, he's obviously going to win the battle, but he's taken pretty substantial casualties in this one. So I think that gives us a good indication of where the high elf stats are right now. The fact that the AI can even remotely do this kind of damage to him is a relatively good sign, I think.
debuff her and hopefully take her down. Also, this is a perfect group to use our War Hydra on again.
Those bolt throwers are just absolutely ripping up the high elf line, so it's super satisfying to watch. And he forgot about his Khainite Assassin. Makes me sad. Would have loved to see him in action.
Their Lord and Eagle are just about to rout. Let's see if we can hit any more units with bombardments. The AI are actually pretty adept at moving away from these spells. I've noticed if they are defending and sitting on a hill or something, toggling a spell on them will get them to move away from it and then back in formation. It's frustrating for us, but it's a cool feature for the AI. Alright, looks like we're done here. Karnthel will be razed to the ground and the ritual put to bed. Nice, a victory. Let's have one more Hydra breath just for good measure. Alright, that's it for the video everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this series of videos surrounding the Dark Elves this week. Remember to follow us on social media for all of the latest updates, and to subscribe on YouTube for exclusive Total War videos.
Alright, thank you Darren. That was a good playthrough. Learned a pretty decent amount of stuff there, I think, from unit stats to the amount of damage that spells are doing, to the ability of the High Elves to actually defend themselves, which is nice to be able to see them actually be able to do that. Dark Elves are looking pretty good. We haven't gotten a great look at the Dread Knights yet. Haven't gotten a great look at the Cold One Knights, or I'm trying to remember what other stuff. I guess we haven't seen Black Dragons much in action. We did see Malekith on his Black Dragon Seraphon at the Vol's Anvil quest battle. But ultimately, I think the game and battles are shaping up pretty nicely. If you are in the camp of not enjoying the super fast-paced battles, I understand where you're coming from, for sure. And just let your voice be heard. Tell CA that you want a change there, and just keep it up. Like, again, I do think this is where CA is going with the trilogy. It's not hard to modify. Thankfully, it's not hard to modify how quick battles happen. So, and stuff like Steel Faith Overhaul, Lucky Spades Overhaul, and a lot of others, battle speed does get changed a bit. So, we're always going to have that option, which is good. And I'm very glad, super thankful that we have such an awesome modding community, because if we didn't, Total War games would not be as good as they are, and that's true for pretty much any game. I don't care how good a game is, it will always be better with a strong modding community, so I'm very thankful that we have one for the Total War scene as well. I am of the mind that I do like fast-paced battles, because I think it rewards good micromanagement, and I think that's important in multiplayer, because of stuff like Emperor Edition in Rome 2, when you have very slow-paced battles, you can't really punish your opponent if they make bad mistakes. So, for example, if they send in a Parthian Cataphract unit into Spears, in that game, they're not going to lose their Cataphracts very quickly. They can come in and reinforce and make up for their mistake. Whereas if you do something like that in Shogun 2, which is very fast-paced, or Rome 1, which is very fast-paced, you're going to get punished very quickly and very heavily. So, I do like fast-paced gameplay, That's not to say that I don't think Total War Warhammer might be a little bit too fast-paced, but I'm still liking the direction the battles are taking. I'm loving the map design in general. Every map that I've seen for this game so far, for Game 2, looks gorgeous. Significantly better than a lot of the ones we have in Game 1, in my opinion. And I think that the campaign gameplay, which I'm not 100% sure yet if I'm going to go in and cover what Darren did. I don't know that I want to make a video for every single video that CA puts out. I feel like we want to have a little bit of mystery left over when the game comes out, and I'm not sure I want to go like just kill the hype train by covering every single piece of news, although you're free to let me know if you want me to cover every single one. I'm sure some of you will. Basically, I like the direction the game's headed. I am super pumped for it. I think that there are a lot of good decisions CA is making, but there are some things like battle speed that could be changed a bit, and I wouldn't mind whatsoever. Of course, siege battles are still something that we're going to be hotly debated up until release and into the future as well. Let your voices be heard. That's the most important thing. CA does listen to feedback. They do listen to constructive criticism, and I am always down to level some at them if I feel like something needs changing. Biggest thing is you just shouldn't be a dick about it. If you're going to leave constructive criticism, be constructive. The second you start name calling, the second you start insulting, that's when they're going to tune you out and not really want to hear what you have to say. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the battle. Thank you to Darren for showing us the Dark Elves and the High Elves in action again. I'm going to be going to Williamsburg this weekend, and I'll be leaving some gameplay for you guys over the weekend. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll talk to you later. Indie Pride signing out for now.